We were all into sort of folklore, we were all into imagery, we were all into sort of things that were a little bit strange, a little bit weird, and Tolkien was a bit king at that. And also because the strange thing about Lord of the Rings was picking people and creatures and things in a very sort of ordinary world, in a very sort of a strange place. And that's the sort of thing that sort of musicians of the 70s liked a lot. I actually tried to do a whole piece on Lord of the Rings, but one of the things about music is if you take an idea, you like to take it a little bit further musically by sort of being a bit descriptive on what you do. And the thing about Tolkien, and probably why he was influential without any major works being done on Lord of the Rings musically, was because he was so descriptive that he left nothing else for the imagination of a musician to take any further. I tried very hard, as did a lot of musicians, to do Lord of the Rings as a form of music, as a musical. But he was very clever, because it was obviously something he wanted to keep for himself, but he certainly gave us all huge influences on how he wrote. My own personal view of Lord of the Rings is a masterpiece. I mean, there are very few books that you can read and read again and find, I won't say something new in, but find something you almost appear to have missed the previous time before. And it goes back to Tolkien being just so unbelievably descriptive, leaving nothing to chance. I won't say nothing to the imagination, that's not really strictly true, but making it so wonderfully clear that it is possible to miss things. I mean, I've read Lord of the Rings, no exaggeration, at least 6 times, probably more. And it's a book that's on my shelf, and probably every year, every couple of years, when I'm picking up a new book to read, or going away to read, or going on tour to read, so you want something, I invariably pick it up.
Well, I know that in 70 and 71, which is when we were really trying to get Uriah Heep off the ground, that was the time when I read Tolkien and Lord of the Rings, and I don't know if it was specifically influential on the music in general in the 70s, but I'm sure it was influential on the progressive rock music of the time, which was really in its infancy. Looking at that imagery, and I mean, it's one thing to write a song, it's one thing to make a movie, it's something entirely different to convey that imagery in a book. It's a really different skill. But I know I was inspired just by the simple fact that somebody had found a way to let their thoughts ramble that far. And it made me feel like my imagination, which is extraordinarily vivid and doesn't leave me alone most of the time, was actually okay. Because there are times when you have these dreams and you have these peculiar visions and you write these strange things, there are times when you wonder if you're actually okay. But in the case of Lord of the Rings, what I found really cool about it, for me personally, was that it was okay to stretch the imagination beyond accepted boundaries. I'd gone to a very strict school and all that, and I'd learned in literature that there were certain areas, Dickens and so on, that were okay. Those portrayals were fine. They were almost everyday things and easy to relate to, and there was always some kind of social or cultural lesson in there somewhere. This didn't attempt in any way to directly educate along a known path. This went on a journey and took you and invited you to go with it. And so I've done some of that in my music, I'm sure of that, and in fact I know that that's true, because I get correspondence and email from people that have been on that journey. So it's a great thing to be able to do, and I'd like one day to be able to write something that was as visually and mentally stimulating as Lord of the Rings.
The thing I loved about it, I mean, it was incredibly influential for me. But what I knew from the beginning, that it was, I thought it would make an incredible illustrated book, with illuminated text and the whole works, something like cross between the Book of Kells and in 5 volumes, if you like. But I'd read that Tolkien didn't want to see his books illustrated, so that was great too, because that was added another kind of element to it. But the thing for me is that when I read the book, the idea I had was that I'd love to find a book that came out of his world, not something that was made in a factory and stuff like that. I wanted to find not necessarily handwritten, but it just had to come from the world of Lord of the Rings. But to me, that seemed to imply some level of decoration, if not actually illustration. But as I say, I understood that Tolkien never wanted to see it illustrated. And it's very interesting because when I read it, I found it incredibly inspirational, but not in the sense that you could be influenced, because although thousands of people have illustrated Lord of the Rings, he doesn't actually describe things in such a way that you could go away, right, and there it is. It's surprisingly vague. As entertainment for myself, I did try and do a painting of the Gollum character, but mostly I was not directly involved in images of any kind. I was trying to nudge things into reality. All my design work had all kinds of things, dragons and goblins lurking around, but the essence of what I was doing was trying to push a building or a piece of furniture or some other idea from 2 dimensions into 3 dimensions, and this was to attract attention to them, if you like.